Hi, I'm Jennifer. I teach math. Please excuse my voice. I've been fighting a cold the last week, and so it's very scratchy, and I'm getting over it, but it's still a little hard to talk sometimes, so please bear with me. One thing I've learned in math, being a math teacher, I primarily teach at the college level, although I have tutored students of all ages, is that you can't just stick to one method of teaching for math because every student learns differently. And with math, you can't teach it or treat it as a traditional lecture class because you have to be involved in what I call active learning. If you don't understand it by doing, then you're not going to understand it. Now, I know some students grasp math a lot better than others and quicker than others, which is why we have to vary it for every student. And these learning objectives help me do that. I never thought of them as learning objectives before. I guess I've just taught, but now that I have an understanding of what is necessary for the classroom, they make a lot of sense for me. So let's talk about them. First of all, we have the behavioral. This is what I've understood is that a student will learn a concept and repeat it back. So let's talk about one, times tables. When I was in third grade, I learned my multiplication tables up through number 12, like 1 times 1, 2 times 3, 12 times 12, that kind of thing. And we would have quizzes and have prizes for those who would win. Well, even for my college students, I'm surprised at the number of students who don't know their times tables and they have to rely on a calculator. So what I would like to do for high school or college students is make a game out of it. I'd help them fill in a times table, but then maybe the next day have a fun quiz where they can earn a few extra points on a test, or with prizes as a way for them to memorize the information. Or we'd make a fun little game, but basically it's kind of a absorb and repeat, which is what I understand behavioral learning to be. And knowing those times tables is important. It's very important information. Even though I don't tend to like for students just to memorize math, there are some things like you would for a history class, you have to memorize facts. I call times tables a math fact. All right, moving on to the cognitivism, which is kind of a hard word for me to pronounce. This is fun. This is where we take memorizing things with a twist. We make memory tricks. For example, we have PEMDAS, which is the order of operations. PEMDAS is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. This is the way that we simplify expressions. We have to follow the order of operations to be consistent. Otherwise, if we did not, we would have 10 different answers for the same question, and that would not be good. So the memory trick for PEMDAS, since we have PEMDAS, one would be, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. There have been a lot of students who I've found over the years who have never heard that before, but once they do, they understand the order. And of course, I let them write it on a test when they get it because it is a fun memory trick. And they know it. They don't forget it. Now, whether they understand how to apply, that's a different story, but at least they won't forget it. Another important concept in algebra are the quadratic equations and formulas. And the quadratic formula looks like this. This is kind of one of those plug and chug things where you have to take numbers and plug them into a formula to solve. Who wants to try to memorize this all day long? I know it because I've done it for so long, but we have memory tricks. And there's a song. I'm going to attempt to sing it now in my scratchy, awful voice. Quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac whole over 2a. Who's going to forget my Grammy Award-winning performance there, right? No one. That's a great song. The last one I'd like to talk about is constructivism. This is where we get into the fun learning of math with games, projects. Students are involved. They can work together. They can do some research outside. They make it fun. I'd even, have students prepare a lesson to teach me. I've had to do that in my college classes for my undergrad, teach an advanced calculus class, a proof. And yeah, you really learn it when you have to delve into it as deeply as I did. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about geometry. I've never taught geometry. I've tutored it, but I've never taught it. And so I am sure in my high school math career that I will have to teach it. Well, geometry is shapes, angles, sides, that kind of thing. And I remember from when I was in high school, we would have to learn shapes. We actually had to make 3D shapes. But these days, We have smartphones, we have iPads, we have all this technology. So my idea for a project, and I got this online, and I think it would be fun to give students a list of shapes, have them for a homework assignment. They can work together in groups if they're able to get together or do this on their own. Go out in their town, neighborhood, house, wherever, and take pictures excuse me, of every shape represented that they can find. For example, a sphere. A globe would work fine. I live near downtown Raleigh, which has the Science Museum. Outside is a huge globe which houses a theater. That's part of a sphere. They could have railroad tracks represent parallel lines. Intersections that form 90-degree angles would be perpendicular lines. Things like that. Buildings would be rectangular solids. Excuse me, pardon me. And things like that. I would give them a list and they would see what they could come up with. Cones, ice cream cones. Who wouldn't want to do that? That would be a lot of fun. So, excuse me, out of all these learning methods, constructivism is my absolute favorite because it does get students involved. It does get them in the active learning of math where they're not just sitting there, because I don't think that students learn math so well if they're just being lectured to. They have to get involved. They have to be able to understand what they're doing, and they have to apply it to real life. I have so many students ask me, what are we going to use this for in real life? Well, getting involved with projects and taking pictures of geometric shapes is one of the best ways to do it so they can see how it relates to their everyday life. Okay, well, as my voice is about lost it, I think I've covered everything. Thank you very much for your time, and say hello to my cat.